Hi, it's Chantelle from Merseyside BLM Alliance, and I am privileged to be joined by MP Kim Johnson, who is the Liverpool MP for the Riverside area. Welcome, Kim. Hi.
Hi, Chantelle again.
Hi, Kim. Yeah, I know we've seen each other like once this week and once online, which is always great. I love hearing you speak. So this week's theme on Merseyside BLM Alliance is Black women in leadership roles and Black role models. And I'd say personally that you fall into both of those categories. Definitely having spoken to you in person and obviously seeing you doing your MP stuff in London and whatnot, I just think you're fantastic. So you're happy to proceed? I'll ask the first question.
Thanks, Chantelle.
Cool. So could you tell us about your experiences as a Black woman in a leadership role?
Well, you know, leadership is an interesting term, isn't it? You know, because some people think about leadership about, you know, people being in senior positions and, you know, well-paid people. But I think leadership goes far beyond that. And I think just because I'm an MP doesn't, you know, provide me with those opportunities. Well, it does provide me with an opportunity, but it doesn't ordinarily give me that put me in that position as being in leadership. And I think everybody, regardless of where they're coming from, can be a leader. However, as a Black woman, I've been involved in various aspects of the employment market. So I trained to be a youth and community worker when I was in my 20s. And then when I qualified, I worked in Liverpool, around Liverpool and around Merseyside, working with a host of different communities. And so for me, what was important when I was working in those communities was working towards making myself redundant, because it was very much about enabling and empowering local people to undertake decisions and activities for themselves, so that, you know, they could move on and not rely on people like me to help and support them. So that was very much about giving people the skills, the tools and the opportunity to improve their communities and their own lives. I think I've always been about paying it forward. You know, I'm a firm believer in information is power, and if you have access to information, you are better able to make an informed decision about what you want to do. So, you know, so those kind of things are key and critical to me, and that's been an integral part of my work and life always. And so when I became a trade union shop steward for Unison, it was again very much part of me being a trade unionist is about supporting people in my workplace and providing them again with the opportunities, you know, and getting them to be familiar with policies and procedures that the managers were using against them. And so if you know how managers work, you're always in a far better position then to challenge them. And so for me, being in a leadership role is very much about, you know, providing people with opportunities to enable them to grow and achieve. So I did that as a trade unionist, I did it as a youth and community worker. And I've done it also in my role as deputy chairs of the Regional National Black Members Committee. You know, it's about supporting other Black workers, often who are working in isolation without a lot of peer support, dealing with a lot of racism, as we know exists in the workplace, but providing them with opportunities to network, to link together, and make contact with people, you know, when they were feeling a bit down and isolated. So for me, leadership is about providing those opportunities. So it's not about being in power and lording it over, do you know what I mean? And so in my position as the MP for Liverpool Riverside, again, that goes hand in hand. You know, I was born, I grew up I still live in the constituency in which I serve, and so I feel that I have an understanding of what's needed and required in the community, because it is very different. You know, the 7 wards within the Riverside constituency, you know, some are quite affluent and some are in the poorest wards in this country, you know, with lots of deprivation and disadvantage. And I've worked in North Liverpool, and I'm familiar with what's going on in and around the community, and I have contacts around the city, which makes my job a lot easier a lot of the time as well, because it's about picking up the phone and knowing where I can go to get information and stuff. And so being an MP for Liverpool Riverside, it again is about improving life chances for people, because as you're aware that for Black people in this city, disadvantage and inequality go hand in hand, and has done for a very, very long time. You know, and I think we had a bit of a peak after, you know, the uprisings in the 1980s, where there was investment in terms of positive action and jobs and training opportunities. And so a lot of that was quite abundant in the community at that time. But you will know that over the last 20 years, I'd say, that a lot of those support mechanisms have diminished in this community. So Ghana's the Law Centre, the Charles Wharton Centre, SLP. So a lot of those organisations that were in situ in our community that could advocate on the behalf of our community has just died a death. And so I think the community has suffered to a certain extent because of that. It's been a bit fractious, and housing policies have also impacted on how the community has grown and developed over the last couple of years. The whole gentrification of parts of the community, you know, people have moved out of the community, and I think I'm kind of emboldened in that there are a number of initiatives happening across the constituency that are bringing communities together. And I think that's been apparent in the last couple of weeks, where the community, public health and the council came together in terms of containing the outbreak of coronavirus. And, you know, for me, as an MP, I think that was fantastic to see that people pulled together. And I think that was, for me, that says an awful lot about what this city is made of and what this constituency is made of. I might have digressed somewhere there, love, sorry.
No, and I love what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? I love what you're saying about your role and about, you know, not seeing yourself, you know, automatically as a leader. It's what you do as a leader. And I think exactly what you've been saying that you do is what a leader should do, in terms of empowering people, not just fixing things for people, but making it so that they can fix things for themselves in future. And I also like the bit that you said about, you know, reaching back as well and pulling people up with you, which is just beautiful. It kind of ties in with the next question, which is the BLM movement has galvanised a lot of young female activists, many in our region. What advice would you give young women stepping into leadership and activist roles?
You see, I would say that stepping into those roles, and if those women are employed, then I would encourage them to join a trade union, because I think trade unions provide a great deal of support in terms of political support and in training, and they provide a whole heap of training opportunities, and they also provide an opportunity to network and learn from each other. And I think that is a great gift as well, from finding out what's happening in other areas. So it is about accessing those kind of opportunities through the trade union movement. And I think at the moment there's an awful lot of resources available online because of the coronavirus. I think various individuals, organizations, a whole universities, training providers are uploading information online so that people can access it. And I think for me, I didn't know what Zoom was, before lockdown, but all of a sudden it's out there, isn't it? And I think Zooms give a great opportunity for bringing people together very easily, because I know as a community worker, that trying to get a whole heap of people in a room at a given time was always very difficult, particularly for women who have, a host of caring responsibilities, and juggling work and everything else. It was always, and it's still, very difficult. But I think Zoom or Team, online meetings provide a great opportunity for people to share their experiences, to train, to network, and to come together. But what I would say to young people and young women particularly is just do it. Don't let anybody hold you back, because I know as a Black working class woman with a voice, because I've always had and I've always challenged and always stood up for, those who couldn't speak for themselves, but would always be described as someone that was very aggressive, very intimidating. And I thought that's interesting because my white peers wouldn't be described in that way. But I would say to anyone, grasp any opportunity. I used to say that to my children all the time, never look a gift horse, get involved, network. And sometimes it's not the easiest thing, if you're someone on your own and going somewhere different. Because I found that when I used to go to Labour Party meetings, they weren't the friendliest of meetings. I didn't find that people said, oh, you knew, haven't seen you here before, come over here, this is what's going to happen. And I think it's about reaching out and support people to enable them to do that, because yourself, the going somewhere, doing something the first time can be a bit anxious. So it's providing that level of support to enable women to do that, and putting people in touch with each other, buddying systems that can, support people to get involved and get active. And some people might start off with little tiny baby steps and doing little things, I might be on the phone talking to people, getting people involved, encouraging people, you're writing a blog or whatever. There's a whole heap of ways for people to get involved and have their voices heard. And I think it's about supporting young women, young Black women particularly. And I think you mentioned before about lack of access to the political sphere for Black women, Black people in general, because that's very prevalent in the city, as because out of the 90 councillors we only have 6 Black Labour councillors. Not too sure how many others. I think there might be 1 Lib Dem. But so things have to change, don't they? And I think things can only change when other people see other Black people doing it. Because I say, if Black people's voices aren't in the room, our voices aren't heard at all. So that needs to change, quickly.
100% agree. I love the point you made about joining a union. I've always been a member of a union, and I am union mad when I speak, especially to younger people. I'm like, just join a union, just do it, because there's protection in numbers. And people say unions are ineffective, but that's not true. And that's like a technique to convince you not to join a union and to see it as a bad investment, when the time that you'll realise that you need a union is when you've got an issue or you need support. And then, quite often you're not able to access the union at that time. So that, I'd absolutely echo that, Kim, 100%. If you are a working person, no matter whether it be the private or the public sector, 100% join a union. I think they've had a massive recruit, haven't they, over the just with COVID-19. There's been a lot more people joining up.
Well, we are heading towards a jobs Armageddon, aren't we? Come October and the end of furlough, I think things are going to become very difficult for a lot of people. And it'll be at that time when you got unscrupulous employers, just getting rid of staff willy-nilly. You look at what happened to BA workers and Willie Walsh, making people redundant and re-employing them on worse contracts and terms and conditions. How unscrupulous. We had millions from the government to support his business, and then he behaves in that way to the workers. And as striking and taking industrial action is the only opportunity that we have to make our voice heard and to challenge employers. So
100%, and we have to protect that, and we have to get on board when people do strike. That's my advice as well, because it is effective and it's a power that they will take away from us, like all of the other ones. So and I echo what you said about networking as well. And Zoom, kind of, I'm the same as you. I didn't know much about technology, but Zoom is a way. I love that now when I'm on Zoom meetings, you see a lot of women, but you also see kids and things, and it's like, you know, it's more welcoming because, like, as hard as it is, I'm off with my kids. It's absolutely, it's hard, but you're not excluded from the conversation because it's accepted that people now have family stuff going on in the background, so there's more opportunities to network. Question number 3. But there is an ongoing debate amongst the BLM campaign, with some suggestions that the BLM campaign is a moment in history, a moment in time, and others suggesting that it's a movement. What are your thoughts on this? How do you feel about it?
Well, you know that Keir Starmer was hauled over the coals, wasn't he, a couple of weeks ago, because he made reference to it being a moment, but he tried to kind of wheeled himself out of that by saying it's a significant moment. But I think, you know, Black Lives Matter has been established since it was 2012, earlier than that.
I thought it was 2016, but it might be earlier than that.
But I think, you know, if you look at why this time that things escalated, because we've seen the police and brutality, you know, time and time again, particularly in America. But as I've said to people, you know, American police don't have state monopoly on killing black people. You know, it does happen here. But what happened in terms of George Floyd and that being the catalyst, I do think what the Black Lives Movement has done is to shine a very bright light on inequality and racism and the need for social justice. So I think it's something that's going to be needed going forward. But what I would hope, though, Chantelle, is that because it's shone a light and because people are now sitting up and taking notice and instigating some kind of change to redress those inequalities, that the likes of the Black Lives Matter movement is not going to be needed, because things have happened and there is significant structural changes in place that does away with the deeply entrenched institutional racism. So I think it has had its moment now in terms of shining a light, but I think it's going to be needed going forward until significant change is made.
Yeah, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back, and it's prompted a lot of people into action, like myself, people who really, I didn't think at the beginning of some of that I'll be where I was now, like kind of out all the time, but it's prompted massive action, and hopefully it will achieve something tangible. And like you say, 10 years down the line, we don't want to say that we're still campaigning. We'd like to say
that our job's done.
Yeah, positive, tangible changes in our community.
Yeah. So, but I think if you look at the whole climate change agenda as well, the fact that last summer, you know, the school strikes, you know, young people coming out on the streets and campaigning and challenging governments and organisations to look at what they're doing in terms of protecting the planet. And I think it's phenomenal that young people are making that stance, and the fact that adults are taking notice, because at the end of the day, it's these young people that will be affected by, you know, climate change going forward, them and their children. And so I think it's very important that young people do have a voice in terms of making change, in terms of the climate change and the environment.
100%, yeah, and there are so many engaged young people, and I think when you think about the legacy that young people have been left, you know, in terms of all these recessions, in terms of the environmental crisis that some people are saying is 30 years away, so that's going to happen in, you know, our lifetimes. You feel kind of bad, but also it's really good that people are engaged, and hopefully, again, 10 years, 20 years down the line, we look back and we say, well, we did make the changes that were needed, because it can be reversed. As awful as the whole coronavirus pandemic has been, even in that short time when we all slowed down and when we stopped driving and when, you know, there wasn't so many freight trains and things like that going around, you could see that the environment was recovering, and you could see the damage can be reversed. So that's something that maybe...
And that was only in a short period of time as well, yeah.
Any short period of time. there is hope, and we just kind of, you know, even the pedestrianisation of town and the little bits where it's been blocked off in the cycle lanes, if that kind of takes off, it's changes like that we will see that will benefit the environment for the better, hopefully.
Yeah.
So in terms of Black Lives Matter and the movement, yesterday obviously we attended the Tracy Gores meeting. I think a few people have posted about that, and she's the head of the task force for Liverpool's equality and diversity, is it? And obviously the subject of conversation now is what's going to happen in this region. So thinking about the BLM movement in this region, like Merseyside, Liverpool, blue sky thinking, how do you think we'll know if we've achieved positive changes? So how will we know that we've changed things for the better, even if it's 10 years down the line when we look back at all the work that we're doing?
I suppose we need to look at those areas that need to be looked at as an issue of priority. So employment in the council, in the public sector, in the private sector, in retail, that would be a significant change, because as people will tell you, as we know, as Black people, we are very invisible in this city and the region. You know, so that would be a sea change. And I think Tracy mentioned yesterday about positive action courses happening. I think if we look at, particularly again in this city, that we have an increase in the number of teachers, Black teachers working in our schools, I think that would be a barometer of success. A reduction in the number of young Black boys that are excluded from schools, because I think that also goes hand in hand to a certain extent. And I think in terms of employment, education and training are the key priorities, I believe, at this moment in time, and right across all of those sectors. And so if we see a significant change in terms of numbers, and not just piecemeal numbers, because I think I said yesterday, it's one thing recruiting people, but it's another retaining and supporting and enabling progression with organisations. Because while positive action was successful to a certain extent in Liverpool in the 80s, and got people through the door, but it didn't get people up the ladder, unfortunately. So, and I think undertaking and challenging those deeply entrenched racist attitudes within those organisations needs to happen, because it's not just the council, as we said yesterday, it is health, it is the universities, Liverpool University, second largest employer in the city, and seeing people, you know, seeing Black people, you know, in positions of in civic leadership positions, you know, as board of governors, you know, in those organisations. So I think there's a push at the moment, because Operation Black Vote have a programme in the city. They've recruited 30 people, and it's hoped that those 30 will get involved in some level of civic leadership some way. But I think 30 is great, but we need more. If you think about the numbers of schools that we have in the city, I was talking to the chair of the Education Select Committee yesterday to say, as a matter of course, it's about looking at all of those schools and ensuring that there's Black representation on all of those governing bodies. And, you know, and some of those things can happen without a great deal of work, really. It'd be a matter of organising community events to inform people, train people and get people there. Because I think if Black people aren't around the table, voices aren't heard, people don't understand. So if you've got a school full of white teachers, you know, with Black kids that are constantly getting excluded, and, you know, they're not understanding and have no comprehension about racism and the impact of racism, it's going to continue to be a problem in this city. You know, while those young people are excluded from school, you know, the widening education attainment gap continues. You know, those young people are forced into other routes, aren't they? Whether, you know, it's county lines or whatever, you know what I mean? But they're out of school, they're out of education. And I think those kinds of issues are key and crucial, giving people opportunities.
100%. Education, training and employment, especially education, as obviously we were both for a student day of action yesterday at the Guilds, and looking at the education system, it is something that does need to be looked at really, really closely, because that's the pathway to everything else, isn't it? And as you say, if people are getting excluded before they've got a foot on the rung, it can take years, if at all ever, the remedy that and they get themselves back on track. So we've got to look at those biases within education that can prevent Black people from even...
Most certainly, yeah. And, and it's about changing people's attitudes. Because I know when I was at school, teachers didn't have any aspiration for me. I was a Black working class girl in a working class school, and the only aspirations they had for me were to go work down the Loon Laundry down the road, or in a shop, or have kids, at 16. So they had no aspirations. And I would surmise that a lot of that is still prevalent in a lot of our schools, with a lot of our, and not just Black kids. I'm talking about a lot of the kids that go to school in disadvantaged areas. And I think that became prevalent yesterday, didn't it, with the A-level results, because it was foreseen that predicted results would impact negatively on Black kids, on those kids that went to schools in disadvantaged areas, looked after kids and send kids. And, it's happened, and then you got the stupid government talking about, you can appeal against it, or you can do resits. But again, they have a knee-jerk reaction to so many things, and people don't know how to do that. But people have been denied an opportunity of going to university as a result of this. And again, that has a major impact on our young people.
Exactly. I can't imagine how that must feel, to work so hard, be predicted an A, get A's in your mocks, and then, oh no, wait, you're Black, or you're disadvantaged. Let's give you a C or a D. And as you say, that's ramifications. That's universities, that's opportunities down the drain. But I did like what you said about them having Black people in positions of power. And I did do a little Google. The Black Lives Matter movement was founded in 2013, and I was just thinking about America. They've had since then, there's more Black people in Congress, particularly Black women, and although things are nowhere near where they should be, they've nowhere near made the progress that they need to make, there are more Black people as a result of that movement in positions of power. So even if you look at, Washington, the mayor getting Black Lives Matter written on the floor leading to the White House, that's because they had a Black person in a position of power to just make life a little bit harder for them. So I absolutely agree with what you've said, Queenie. That needs to be on the agenda, getting Black people up there and giving them pathways. And it kind of leads me nicely onto some of the questions we've had messaged in. I'll only give you two. So the first one is, do you think political mentorship should be available for young Black activists?
Most definitely. Because when I was elected as the Riverside CLP Black Members Officer a couple of years ago, the first thing that I did was to establish a Black Members Forum. And because we were a forum and seen as an affiliated group, we could then nominate 5 extra Black people onto the CLP. So we got 5 extra people, Black people on the CLP with a voice, being active, and it was also about encouraging more Black people to look at becoming a councillor. So it was great that Joanne and Calvin were 2 new Black councillors that were elected last year. But I think mentorship and getting involved in politics is key and crucial, because one of the things I've mentioned quite recently and will be pushing for going forward will be trying to get more young Black people active in politics, because when I came to Parliament, it became very apparent that people, staffers working in MPs' offices were on the whole white, middle class, and so that was, quite surprising, given that it was London. You do expect a bit more diversity. And so what I will be asking, and I've not broached this yet with any of the MPs, but as a starting point is looking at developing some kind, either an apprenticeship scheme or an internship scheme, paid internships, and recruiting 16 young people, because we have 16 MPs operating in the region. And so looking at the possibility of having a Black young person in each of those offices to give them the opportunity to understand what it's like working for an MP, being involved in politics and understanding the old nuances of Parliament. And so that's something that I'm going to be looking at doing, in the next year or so.
Wow,
so I think it's really important, but also looking at opportunities for people to go and come and volunteer, within my constituency office. But I think that needs to be made available right across Liverpool in all 5 constituency offices, to give people an opportunity, because often people like us don't get those opportunities. And I would say that that would often disadvantage people if you wanted to, so. And I think it's got to be key and crucial in terms of making a significant change in terms of the political landscape, getting people to join the party. And I will say to people, you need to join the Labour Party. We need more young Black people in the Labour Party. I get sick and tired of seeing people of a certain demographic at meetings. So we do need local people involved in making decisions that affect them. And that's what I'd say, get involved. And I mentioned before, and I pull no punches, that not always the friendliest of paces, but go with somebody else, speak to the secretary, the chair of either the branch or the CLP in advance to say, I'm coming, I'd like to speak to you in advance and stuff, but doing those kind of things, getting involved in politics locally, getting involved in campaigns, other campaigns, whether it be, Black Lives Matter, Acorn. There's a number of things happening across the city that people can get involved in, to again network, build a skill level and experience on those kind of things.
Brilliant, Kim. I'll definitely find out more about that, because I am part of like a million forums within Black Lives Matter leaders across the UK, and one of the things that consistently comes up in our conversations is, does anyone know politics? Like, what are we doing? How are we getting this sorted? So it is, and everyone's kind of just blindly trying to find the way and stumbling around and just trying to navigate the ways through the political forum. And as you say, there is a certain demographic who are, quite politically minded, and it's usually white middle class people. And I don't think that's for Black people not wanting to get involved, but quite often Black people, because of circumstances, are so busy just surviving and, working and just trying to get by day to day. There's not the time or the resources or the opportunities. So, having a mentorship scheme like the one you mentioned would be absolute gold. And obviously, as that comes along, I'd love if you could keep me informed, because I'll get it everywhere for you.
Definitely. But, and I say there was Operation Black Vote. They recruited. How widely that was circulated, I'm not sure, Chantelle, but it would have been good to have had some young people on that cohort. But it might be, we might need to look at something, and that might be something that the race task force might want to consider in terms of going forward and looking at some kind of opportunities for young people. And I know that some of young people within our school system have been active and involved in, the youth parliaments and stuff, but that is down to quite small numbers, and there are those opportunities. But yeah, that needs to be expanded, because often in politics, it's not what you know to, and opening doors and leverage and
100%, and hopefully it is something that the race task force will consider, because as you say, it's definitely necessary. So I'll give you your last question, which is, do you think that Black women, and we kind of covered this, have the same advancement opportunities as other demographics?
No, we don't. Because, and it's a fact, isn't it? Because, Black women generally will be those women that often are operating at the lower rungs of any kind of business and work, if whether it's, in the council or within health. You don't get many senior managers, Black senior managers in any of those organisations. We tend to be on the lower rung and denied opportunities for progression often. So I'm balancing working and being mothers. But from my experience though, Chantelle, I would say that it is women generally that get involved in community. Women get involved and want to make changes, whether that's, days gone by want to put, humps in the road to stop traffic, or improving childcare opportunities. It's women that often get involved wanting to make significant changes. And I'm always aghast when I used to say to women when I was a trade union rep, say, you'd be a good rep, you should do this. Oh no, I can't do that. How often do you hear women say, oh, I can't do that? And I think we can, because you've been doing it. It's about that lack of confidence and self-esteem. And I think because often it's beaten out of us, isn't it? You can't do that. You're not good enough. Often told that, and becomes, I think, sadly, a self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, we're not provided those opportunities. As I say, I know my teachers in school had no aspirations for me, but I wanted to do stuff, and so I was like that. No one tells me that I can't do that, so I will do that attitude. And so, and it got me to where I am, I suppose. And I think for other women, it is difficult, in terms of balancing and being provided an opportunity. But I'll go back and say that the trade union movement is a great way of building confidence and self-esteem. Some people come in as a health and safety rep and, work their way up, because they've been given training, they're given encouragement, and they're given support. And I think that's all we need. We need that support instead of being told we can't do it. It's like to build people up instead of, crashing people down. That's what we need.
100%. Just want to say, how wrong were your teachers though? I hope they're looking now like, oh, and it makes them obviously makes them challenge the thinking, because quite often though that can be the fuel that drives you, because I've been told that so many times, and I just think it can send you one way or the other, and we just have to hope that it'll send people the other, and you can just build that determination to prove things.
Well, if you think about the meeting we were at yesterday, how many women were on that call?
I didn't notice that. I was like, yes.
But
I've noticed that in this region as well. A lot of the leaders, particularly black leaders, are women, and that's significant. It's something that has to be acknowledged.
Yeah, because I think we have that attitude: what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Chantelle, definitely. Yeah, I think
100%, 100%, and I love it. And I do think, as you've said, it's to say that you're going to have an easy ride, you've got to be honest, it's not going to be easy. And in most studies, if the most disadvantaged demographics, consistently black women are at the bottom. And as you mentioned earlier, it's that kind of trade-off of being perceived as angry or hostile when you exhibit behaviours which in a man would be seen as leadership skills, but in a black woman it's something to be, and it's like, oh well, fine, you know what I mean. But yeah, I could talk all day about that, but I won't be long. I'd just like to say thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for coming on. Again, I just love to hear you speak. I just think you do pull no punches, but I think that is what we need. I don't think we need, we need that right now. We need you right now. So I'd just say I'm Maze up. I'm one of your biggest fans.
Oh, thank you so much. It's really nice talking to you, love. But what I'll keep on saying to people, I'm not a polished politician. I'm just, a working class black woman with a gob.
You're brilliant, and I'm glad you I'm glad you're on our side, so to speak. I'm made up. Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you for coming on.
And you keep up the good work as well, Chantelle. Okay, love. And have a good weekend.
So hold on 1 minute.